Thank you for joining me for this talk on Bombus ternarius, the Tri-color Bumble Bee. One of my favorites. Very colorful. I see it every year in my yard and in my area. So let's take a look at a little bit of its life history. Well, in terms of its range, you'll see it in the Canadian Maritimes. It travels west across the boreal forest into the Canadian Great Plains. It's found as far south as Pennsylvania in the eastern temperate forest, and then works its way out towards North Dakota in the west. So it's got a pretty large range, but mostly forested areas with some in the Great Plains. For identification references, I refer you to Bumblebees of North America or the online bumblebee keys, eastern or western bumblebees. And also keep in mind the generous folks at Ohio State Bee Lab, which have run all kinds of short courses during the COVID period and after, and there are resources on their website, as well as many other state Bumblebee Atlas web pages. When it comes to Tri-color Bumblebee, it is a medium-sized bee running from 17 to 19 millimeters. Here in this image that I took in the end of April, you will see a fairly large size queen. The workers can be as small as 9 to 13 millimeters. The males will fall in the ballpark of 10 to 14 millimeters. So they're definitely going to be smaller than the guyns or the females that you see in the fall. This bee is, in terms of its head length, is medium-sized, medium-tongued, or medium-cheeked. And by that, basically, what they're trying to say is that the cheek is slightly shorter than it is broad. There's the large segment of the tarsus, which is the base of tarsus, on the mid leg, and the far back corner is rounded instead of pointed as in some species. It's a little hard to make out on this image, but anyway, it gives you a general idea of this medium-sized bee. In terms of hair and the color of hair, this is a pretty well kept, almost looks like it came from the barber shop. The hair is short and even. The face on the top of the head, the literature says black. If you look at this image, you'll see it looks more white. White and yellow are almost interchangeable. Most of the ones that I see in my area tend to be more white than yellow. But the head will have some yellow patches. The workers tend to have more yellow mixed in. This one is a queen because this is late April, in northern Maine. So this is definitely a queen. In terms of the hair on the thorax, there's a band behind the head on the top of the forward of the thorax, which is a yellow band, looks white here. And then behind that is a black band between the wings. Now the top of this black band will have a sharp line, but if you see the bottom of this black band where it transitions into yellow, the transition is pretty sharp, but it has a V shape towards the bottom. The abdomen, which is under the wings here, you can see several segments. The first abdominal, right behind the leg here at the top, you can see is supposed to be yellow. It's white in this image. Then there's 2 bands of orange, and then there's yellow, and then the rest are black. Now the males, at least the ones I'm seeing in northern Maine, are a lot scruffier looking. They're not as large as the queens, obviously, but they can also have a lot more yellow color on their later abdominal sections. So there might be yellow there. They're going to be a little scruffier. And they will not have this V shape. The band will be kind of a straight band on the thorax between the wings. So that's for the males. You'll see those later in the season as we get towards August. Again, depending on where you live. In terms of habitats, if you read Miller and colleagues, they say this is a woodland species. It will be either in or near the woodlands or in wetland areas. Now, what you're seeing is a shot of the ground, and in the dead center of this image, you might just be able to make out a queen. This was taken at towards the end of May, and the queen was flying around close to the ground looking, and now she's down in the leaf litter kind of searching around for a nest site. So this is a mixed wood conifer hardwood stand in northern Maine, and she's in there searching around for a site for a nest. There's a long list of plants. This is the list from Miller, Thorpe, Richardson, and Cola. But if you want to look at the Montana Field Guide, you'll see an even longer list. But everything from asters and blackberries, raspberries, all the way down to milkweed and rhododendron. Other species like Montana Field Guide includes Monarda, Achillea, and several other species. Their behavior is primarily an underground nester, and their brood size tends to be on the small side. So compared to common eastern, they'll have about half what a common eastern might have. And again, this is the potential. It doesn't mean that's what they're going to have. They may have, only double digits. In a study from Alberta, it showed that the first brood had just over 9 pupae that developed, and the second and third broods had just below 4 on average, and that's from the Montana Field Guide, where they're quoting other research. This particular species had the males patrol circuits, so they're going to be flying circuits, perhaps even dropping pheromones along those circuits in search of females. Now, there's some other interesting research. For example, on abundance in the Northeast, both the relative and also the absolute abundance has been increasing steadily. This is from a Jacobson and colleagues article from 2008. And then there's another article from 2009 that says in parts of Illinois where farming and development have basically eliminated this species because of the lack of habitat, perhaps even pesticides, but definitely a habitat issue might be part of the bigger picture. In an article from Maine posted to Environmental Entomology in 2021, where they looked at the distribution and foraging of the species, they found that comparing this to yellow-belted bumblebee, it was a lot more common and more broadly distributed and fed on a lot more plants than the yellow-belted bumblebee. So a little bit more recent study from Butler and colleagues in Maine. In terms of activity, if you go to the Vermont Atlas of Life, which is their survey inventory of animals, you will see that they say this is an early to late season bee. Well, in fact, in northern Maine, around the same latitude as northern Vermont, I have photographed this bee on crocus, which was one of the few things flowering at the end of April. And a week prior to this photograph, I'm pretty sure we had a dusting of snow still on the ground. So this can be out very early. I saw some other non-bumblebee species collecting nectar or pollen from the crocus at this time. In terms of nest detection, an article on Entomology Today says that it's very difficult to detect their nest because there really are no external signs. one of the ways that you can detect nests is if you get lucky enough to be near one when you see bees coming in and out. And I remember one time my neighbor found a colony when a lot of the queens and males were coming out later in the season, and they were kind of getting their orientation before flying off outside the nest. So there was like a half dozen of them on the ground just outside of the nest. It's another way if you get lucky enough to detect it. So anyway, with that, I'm going to wrap up this brief talk on Bombus ternarius, the tricolor bumblebee. And in my next posting, I'll post some late season, late summer into early fall picture of tricolor bumblebee as well as common eastern bumblebee feeding on aster. So until next time, thank you for listening.